This message has no affiliation with the Department of War. Good evening, everyone. Stay with us tonight as we welcome in the author of Bullied Behind Bars, Mr. Matt Melvin. This is the Martin Memo. The Martin Memo. All right. Well, sir, it's great to have you on the podcast. I was thrilled when I had seen that you had reached out and wanted to be a part of this. So I guess to start this off, just tell us a little bit about yourself.
I grew up in Tingsboro, Massachusetts. When I was 7, my family and I moved to Vermont. My father got a job at Franklin County Home Health, and it was the biggest mistake. It's been very challenging living in Vermont with all the liberal ideology. I was once a Democrat, but when I went through the judicial system, I decided that the Democratic ideology didn't work for me, and I became a Republican.
Absolutely. So can you further elaborate on what in the judicial system decided that you're like, you know what, Democrat Party clearly does not have my back, they don't support me, whatever it may be. Can you walk us through that process?
In 2004, I worked at a car dealership. They wouldn't pay me my commissions, so I decided to take the law into my own hands, and I tried to sell one of their cars. I got 18 months. I have autism, and I'm on the Asperger's spectrum. And at that time, they had a mental health court. Judge Jeffrey Crawford and Bob Wolford both decided I didn't meet the criteria to get into the mental health court, and so I went through the regular court. If I was allowed to complete the mental health court successfully and didn't pick up any additional charges, I have a record today.
Gotcha. Okay, I see. Thank you for elaborating on that. And you mentioned that I read your memoir that you had sent that you are a gay Christian Trump supporter. That is correct, right?
It is, yes.
Okay.
I volunteered for him in 2016. In New Hampshire, was knocking doors, and my favorite people to talk to were people that had Hillary signs in front of their houses or apartments. And I actually ran into a Hillary volunteer, and I noticed she had a pen and paper, and I asked her, I said, Hillary had 13 cell phones that she destroyed. Why aren't you using an app? And she just walked the other way.
Oh, I love it. I love it. So, as a gay Christian Trump supporter, your identities are very uniquely layered. How have those parts of you intersected in your everyday life outside of prison, and what role did they play in motivating you to write this memoir?
I wanted to share my story to the world as a lesson that whenever you mess with the criminal justice system, you can't control the consequences. And so by choosing to break the law, I gave up all my rights, I gave up my freedom, and I was a slave to the criminal justice system.
So take us back to that pivotal moment when you attempted to sell the stolen car. What was going through your mind, and how did that one decision spiral into that felony conviction, like mentioned earlier, and federal prison?
Being autistic and on the Asperger's spectrum, my shadow is impulsivity. So I still am an impulsive person. It has a benefit because I'm also fearless, but I have to put that in check because that impulsivity doesn't ever go away. It's still always there. So I don't fear anything. And so I have to put that in check, and I use that for good rather than for bad.
Absolutely. Can you give us some of the examples you said as good? Can you give us some of those examples that you've used it in a beneficial way?
Oh, absolutely. I am not afraid of confronting evil. I will call it out. I don't have any issues. I don't care what people think of me. I only care what God thinks of me. So I am not a people pleaser, but I'm also not for everyone. Some people want to be friends with everybody, but they don't really know who they are. I know who my friends are, and I set everything out front. I used to not tell people I was autistic, and now I do because I want to make sure that we're on the same field. If somebody doesn't agree with me, then we should just part ways. Because I want friends that are long-lasting and I want to go to the deep end of the pool with people, I don't have time to talk about sports, weather, leaves changing.
Yeah, absolutely. You're very analytical. I love that.
I'm
I love
intense,
that.
I'm passionate, but
Yeah.
make no mistake, I had a friend for 31 years, and I know very, very few people that have had friends for that long.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's a are you still friends with this person, or have you
I
parted
am not.
ways?
I made the mistake of loaning her money, and when I
Mm.
asked to get repaid, that was the end of the friendship. So my cautionary tale is to never loan money to friends with the expectation of getting paid back.
Right, absolutely. I feel like this generation can really benefit from that, as a lot of people end up doing something and that it just, yes, I would agree. That's great advice for a lot of the listeners out here. So, prison is often romanticized or demonized in media, but your book paints a raw picture of bullying and isolation. What was one of the most unexpected challenges that you faced right away when you first arrived to that prison?
Well, I mean, I will give you an example that happened in 2004. I was placed in a cell all by myself, and I had a visit with my mother, and the guards actually accused my mother of bringing in tobacco. So I was quarantined, and I hate to get too graphic about what happened, but they wanted to make sure that my bowels didn't produce any cigarettes, which of course they didn't. I don't smoke. But that was one eye-opening factor that I would have never thought would have occurred. Ironically, that was in St. Albans, and that was the first place I went the second time I went to prison.
Okay. So you kind of briefly described there that you've had some experiences with sexual assault and being targeted. If you're comfortable, can you walk us through how you navigated those moments and what kept you going every single day?
Multiple facilities I was at, inmates would lie to the guards and tell them that I was propositioning them. And in Essex, I was actually placed in solitary confinement. I called my brother on the phone to let him know what was going on. And my brother said on the paid phone, I will take care of it. And within 2 hours, John Schroeder from IRS and May Chow from Secret Service, the same two agents that had interrogated me, showed up at my brother's work and threatened him.
Wow. Wow. That's unreal. That just shows how deep some of this corruption within the judicial branch lies, huh?
It goes very, very deep. They are all tied together. They will lie, cheat, and steal for one another.
Jeez, that's unreal. How do you feel about the Supreme Court right now? Do you feel like it's very corrupt as well? Do you feel like there are certain aspects? What are your thoughts on it as we now have a conservative 6-3 lead within the Supreme Court?
I still feel it's very, very corrupt. There is no question that there is a list of Epstein and every person that violated a young woman or young man's boundaries. And there is no question that that list needs to come out to the American people. There are high-level executives, high-level people in our government whose names are on that list. And I believe and was very disappointed when Mike Johnson, who I trusted and respected, decided to adjourn Congress early before the vote. That was extremely disappointing. I and the American people deserve an answer. And this is the problem, that sex offenders in this country are not prosecuted.
Absolutely.
They are protected. And it is absolutely disgusting. It is the worst thing that a person can do. You know, a friend of mine told me that is the only thing right now that will unite conservatives and liberals. Nobody has any tolerance for sex offenders.
Absolutely.
I personally believe they should be thrown into the Everglades.
Yeah. 100%. I would agree with that
And we're
100%.
seeing it time again. We saw it with Larry Nasser and all the gymnasts. We're seeing it right now with Sean Diddy Combs. Jay-Z is also involved in this.
Unreal. Unreal. I think it's very sickening because it seems like these celebrities or these higher than life figures just keep getting away with it, and it's very, like you said, it's very sickening, and it's also very troublesome that this just keeps happening. That these people just almost have a certain amount of immunity in a way because of their status. Would you agree with that?
No question. No question. It's all power, privilege, and justice. It was an old show I can't remember the host, but he died, and it was a great show about how much power and privilege can get you. We know that Bill Clinton had 24 different cell phone numbers.
Wow. Oh, I'm no mathematician, but I don't think that the average human needs 24 different cell phone numbers. I think that's a little bit sketchy, and that would be one of the first places that I would be looking if I was the DOJ or anyone from that aspect of life. Yes. Oh gosh. You're obviously, you and I share the same belief of being a Trump supporter. We believe in President Trump. Are you at all worried about him being listed within the Epstein files, or do you think that's just another big Democratic hoax that they like to peddle?
We had 4 years of pedophile Joe. If there was anything on Trump in those Epstein files, those democrats would have run to the microphone to produce his name. It is unbelievable that every single news agency, when Jeffrey Epstein's victims were giving a news conference, the only thing they wanted to ask about was, is Donald Trump's name on the list? They did not care about anybody else. They had no questions on Bill Clinton. We've seen Bill Clinton wearing a dress. What human being, what male, normal thinking human being would ever wear a dress?
I 100% agree with you, and then I know the other argument that people will make is it was sealed by a judge, so that's why the Biden administration could not access it, which is partially true. But it was sealed by a Democratic judge appointed by, I believe, either Barack Obama or Joe Biden, so there's no way that it would not have been leaked out somehow. So I think that's another argument. And there was some of the documents that were released, if you recall, this was back in 2022, 2023, somewhere around there. And yet Donald Trump was mentioned in two or three separate occasions. And it was Donald Trump on that island? And they always answered, not to my recollection, not to my recollection, no, things like that. So it just further proves that it's another witch hunt. That's what it feels like.
The Democrats only care about Donald Trump. That's their only interest. Well, not just that. They're also interested in illegal immigrants.
Yes. Yeah. So
helping to fund all sorts of transition therapy in every third world communist country. So I say, anybody who doesn't like America, give me a name of a communist country that you'd like to be deported to, and I'd be happy to pay it for a one-way ticket.
Absolutely, yes, 100% agree with that. With everything you just said, it's very sad, very sickening. And I made a joke earlier, but it's not even a joke on my last podcast about immigration. They're so focused on aborting their own party away that's why they need to import all these new people into the country.
They want as many non-voters to vote as possible because they want to steal the election. And all you have to do is follow the money. We know George Soros is heavily involved in this. This individual sold out his own people.
Unreal. It's very sad. I know I keep saying that, but it truly is that we live in what should be the greatest country in the world, what I still believe is the greatest country in the world, but there is so much corruption, and it feels like a majority of these politicians, even a lot of the Republican politicians, are complicit in a whole bunch of cover-ups and all of this, and it's just very disheartening. I feel like that's why Trump himself is personally so targeted, because he's an outlier. He is above all of that bottom-feeding garbage and sewage, and he's really trying to stir up Washington and get rid of all that bloated bureaucracy and all that terrible corruption within D.C.
No question. I mean, why do you think Charlie Kirk got killed? That was by no accident. Yeah. We will never, I guarantee you, have everything on what happened. We still don't know about Matthew Thomas Crooks. We still don't know about the murders of Malcolm X, Martin Luther King Jr., RFK, JFK. All of these people went against the norm, tried to challenge the status quo, and look at what happened.
Yep.
So no individual that gets in office will be able to clean out the swamp. I saw the swamp firsthand. I saw how corrupt it was. You know, when I was breaking the law, Aaron Noble was the former chief of police. This individual was so corrupt, he received a $200,000 payout from the town of Shelburne to just go away. He didn't like me, and that's why I feel that the government pursued me so much. In my second case, I couldn't pass a background check, so I used other people's information. And I'm not saying it's right. It was wrong, no question. However, the government pursued me for 6 years, went to 5 grand juries, spent $500,000, and finally got an indictment against me. And guess what? Guess who the judge was? Same judge in the state, Judge Jeffrey Crawford. Now he was elected by, or nominated by, the former senator, Pat Leahy, a drunk, a 46-year veteran of the United States Senate, ambulance chaser. And the amazing thing is, my lawyer, a Democrat, had been practicing law for 30 years, and he had never seen a case of financial crime where there was no financial loss from a single victim. But yet the government pursued me emphatically as if I had stolen $1 million, which I didn't. I did all the work. The only thing I did wrong was I used other people's information to pass a background check. But I did the work myself. I didn't put other people's social security numbers or driver's license numbers down.
Right.
So I want to share my story. I want to get it out to the world because I feel I have a very unique perspective. I know what goes on. I've seen it, and I've seen the gangs. You know, when I was raped in prison, I was raped by several members of the Aryan Brotherhood. And in order to be initiated into one of these gangs, you have to have a violent act. Rape would qualify as a violent act.
Yep. Wow.
I went to 10 different facilities in 18 months because I challenged the status quo. I wrote grievances. I held them accountable. And even in that institution I told you about, Essex, at one point, they pulled me out of my solitary confinement cell, wouldn't give me my medication, brought me into the attorney-client room, surrounded me with 5 guards with their cameras on. The superintendent was present, and they wanted to know what my end game to writing all these grievances was. They thought that by writing all these grievances, I would get out of jail for free. That's not how it works. There is no get out of jail for free, unless you go out in a casket.
Wow. Your story exposes some of the deep injustices in the prison system, from mistreatment of marginalized people to the lack of support of individuals like yourself. What systematic change do you think could prevent others from facing what you did?
We have to strip the current system down. We need an outside party to handle all of it. From the prosecution to the judges, they all work for the same folks. They all know each other. I'll give you another example. I got a traffic ticket maybe 10 years ago in New Hampshire. I went to court. The police officer was not there. The judge sitting on the bench says, "Where's the officer?" "Oh, he's not here." "I'm going to call him up on the phone and have him come down." That's not how it works.
No. That's unacceptable. That is unacceptable.
They all are friends. They all know each other. It's a corrupt system. And then I'll give you the back end on the jury system. I've had a couple of friends that have served on juries. And one of my friends, a deacon, told me, one of the jurors said, "Hurry up, let's find this guy guilty. I got to go back to work." My other friend and my accountant told me, "Hurry up, let's find this guy guilty. I got to go to the basketball game." So the mentality on a lot of jurors' minds is this person is already guilty. Why else would they be here? So the defendant has a huge mountain to climb in order to convince the jury that he or she is not guilty.
I see. So you think it's not anymore the old phrase of innocent until proven guilty. You feel like it's almost potentially the other way now, guilty until proven innocent.
No question. And a mere accusation against somebody will destroy them.
Yeah, that's very true. That is very true. Oh, man. This book emphasizes the accountability and transformation. How did writing it and your mistakes, like the car incidents, help you process guilt and emerge stronger on the other side and be now what I would consider a pretty big advocate for what you're preaching?
In 2015, August 2015, I was traveling on 495, headed west in the middle lane, going 72 miles an hour, when a Lexus SUV was coming the opposite direction, came down an embankment, literally crossed in front of my car. I was saved by a few seconds, and I knew right then that God was real, that I needed to stop lying, stop stealing, and start living an honest lifestyle. So my life all is consuming by God. I do everything to fulfill what God would want me to do rather than what man wants me to do. I read my Bible. I go to Bible study. I'm praying. I'm constantly trying to research more information about what's going on. And when you read the Bible, you have to understand a couple of things. You have to understand context, who it was written to, Jew or Gentile, the time it was written, and then you have to understand what's going on at the time. And you can't just cherry pick a verse that sounds nice, like Ezekiel 33:16, all my sins will be forgiven. Okay, I saw an episode of Live PD, and they had an individual got pulled over, and he had a Bible, and he had fentanyl in Ezekiel 33:16. And he said, "Here, officer, that's not how it works. You can't just use the Bible when it suits you."
Yes. I would 100% agree with that. Or how people like to cherry pick the verses and make it seem like that the Christian religion is just some sort of terrorist religion or different things like that, on exactly how you had mentioned. So
Christians are being killed in great numbers every day. We just saw a huge slaughter of Christians in Nigeria.
Absolutely. I feel like they really try to demonize the Christian religion, especially nowadays, and now with like the radical Muslim movement moving in and kind of almost taking its place in a way, not perhaps, that there's probably a better way to say it, but it kind of almost seems like that. Would you agree with that?
The Muslim religion is evil. It's satanic. Muhammad was a very evil individual. And if you read Sharia law, it'll say that they want to eliminate every single religion outside of the Muslim religion. Every single Muslim, and I'm not saying all are radical, but they are trying to take over in very huge sections of the country. We have seen a huge amount of violence going on in Michigan. Okay, we just saw a shooter. There was a woman that ran over a whole bunch of people in Michigan. Dearborn, Michigan is rising up as a huge Muslim takeover.
Yeah.
Rashida Tlaib, a Muslim, is is the representative there. It is by no coincidence that we're seeing this violence go on where we see Muslims that are in office. Same thing in Minnesota, where Ilhan Omar is Congresswoman, where we are seeing a huge amount of violence.
Right.
We cannot, and in Vermont, we have a progressive. His name is Bernard Sanders, and he is the most selfish, arrogant person I have ever met in my life. Okay, this man said that he is too good to ride a commercial flight. And he actually said that he doesn't want to fly United. He shouldn't have to wait in line. Well, he's never actually flown because United doesn't have a direct flight to Washington, D.C. Only American Airlines does. But because Mr. Sanders has actually never flown commercial, he wouldn't know that. I have reached out to every single senator, congressperson in my state. They're all Democratic for help getting my record expunged. They do not have any interest in helping me. The only interest they have is getting themselves reelected. I received an email from Becca Balint full of lies. She was claiming that the Democrats are all in Washington trying to work to get the government reopened, and all the Republicans are out on vacation. Right. That is, and I wrote back and I said, "You need to resign. You are a disgrace to this country. This country."
Yeah.
Everything that these people do is a lie. This is how you know the difference between a Democrat and a Republican. A Democrat, this is their mantra. It's always somebody else's fault. I have never once heard a Democrat say, "I'm sorry, I made a mistake. This is what I did."
Yeah.
My mother, 30 years teaching at UVM. I have seen the indoctrination of a liberal institution on my mother. My mother, growing up, was a very pleasant person. Over the 30 years of indoctrination from UVM, and for those people who don't know, it's the University of Vermont, I have seen her never take responsibility for anything, always blame others, and she, unfortunately, all of her friends are Democrats. She doesn't have any interest in hearing anybody else's perspective. She believes that Trump is bad. She consumes hours of time watching the Communist News Network that are incapable of telling the truth. Yeah. I wouldn't believe Communist News Network if their tongue came notarized.
Yeah, absolutely. So, yes, between them and MSDNC, as I like to call them, those are some of the absolute worst of the worst, and I feel like you said, and the school system, I cannot hit on that enough. Our kids are being indoctrinated by these school systems, just telling them how Trump is terrible, how the Republican Party is full of a whole bunch of just these awful people, and how the Democrat Party and socialism is the way to go, when it's the opposite. And it's very sad to see how much it has been growing, and I feel like it's kind of been exponentially growing over the past, maybe 10 years or so, and that's why they took out Charlie Kirk 100%. His organization, the Turning Point organization, they were really championing going into those schools, showing them that what they are being taught is 100% wrong, invalid, and that there is a much better way out there, and that's why they ended up taking him out, because of that.
Charlie Kirk was a martyr. He was an amazing man, and he didn't judge anybody. You know who he judged? He judged racists. There was an interview he did with a racist, and he clearly told him, "Get out of my line. I don't want to have any part of you."
Yeah. Absolutely.
Turning Point was the only organization that would actually allow a leftist to come and ask questions. There is no leftist organization that would ever want to hear from a conservative.
Right. 100%. I want to pivot here and ask you a couple questions. As someone who's openly gay, Christian, and a Trump supporter, you obviously challenge a lot of stereotypes. How does your faith intersect with your experience of bullying, and what message would you share with listeners grappling with similar identity conflicts?
Don't worry about what other people think of you. Love yourself. If you don't love yourself, you can't love another person. And when somebody tries to convert you or try to force a conversion therapy, that's because they're miserable themselves. They don't understand the challenges that you face. Let me give you an example. If you are a coffee fanatic and you love coffee, how would you feel if I said, Zach, you can't drink coffee anymore. I think coffee is evil. You're gonna die. It's the same principle. It's trying to convert another person into your ideology or your way of thinking. If you haven't walked in that man or woman's shoes, how dare you try to tell them what to do and what they should and shouldn't be doing? He who is without sin cast the first stone.
Yep, 100%. 100%. I want to speak on the LGBTQ side of things. There's a new movement. I didn't read too much into it. It just popped up on my news feed this morning, where there's a group that's trying to kind of separate the T and the Q of the LGBTQ community. Would you agree? Would you be in favor with that? What's your whole stance on the T and the Q aspect of the community?
I'm definitely not in favor of the T and the Q. I think there's a lot of evil going on. When a person is born a man and a woman, or a woman, that is what God intends them to be. You are asking to change who you are, and taking sex changes and trusting doctors, it's going to be a miserable experience, and it's because you're unhappy with who you are. I encourage a person who is unhappy with who they are to start loving themselves. Find people who will accept them for who they are. Stop trying to appease the world. If you try to appease the world, you're always going to be defeated. Who cares what other people think?
Right. 100%. I would 100% agree with you on that aspect of things. And I think that the T and the Q, you hit the nail on the head right there. That is such an evil aspect of what could be such a beautiful community. So with that being said, this is your first book. What was the hardest part of turning such a painful personal story into a memoir? And did anything unexpected come during the whole writing process?
That's a loaded question. Yes. Lots. I would say the biggest challenge was finding an editor that would help me, being that I'm a Trump supporter, because most editors are super liberal. It's coming from academia. Academia is infiltrated with liberal ideology. So there were a lot of people who would have nothing to do with me because I was a Trump supporter. And in fact, some of them wanted me to take that completely out of the book, and then they would help them. Then they would agree to help me. But I didn't want to do that. That would be compromising my morals and who I am. Again, to appease the world. And I'm not going to do that. The Bible says what it means what it says. That's how I live my life. And if you don't like me, oh well.
Yeah, absolutely. For listeners who might be facing their own rock bottoms, whether it's legal trouble, identity struggles, or feeling bullied in their own lives, what's one piece of advice from your journey that you would want them to take away?
You need to love yourself. Surround yourself with positive people.
Yeah, I would agree. I feel like nowadays, especially with social media and just all the news especially, they feel it as well. People don't love themselves like they used to. They keep comparing themselves to other people, and that is not the right answer. You should be comparing yourself to yourself on how you can be better, how you can grow, what you can do better, and you should be picking up a good book, especially the Bible, and just diving into it and understanding who you are through Christ, and instead of all these other people that are just going to end up tearing you down or leading you down the wrong path.
Right. One quote I really like is by Edmund Burke. He said, "The only thing necessary for the triumph of evil is for good men to do nothing."
Yeah. It's very true. That's a great one. I haven't heard that. I really like that quote. That's a good one.
So if you see evil going on in your world and you do nothing, you are doing exactly what Edmund Burke preached against.
Yeah, 100%. It's almost as if you're complicit within the evil by doing nothing.
Correct. And it's very easy. A lot of people don't want to disturb the status quo. They want to stay quiet. They want to be unseen. But guess what? Every knee will bend. Every knee will confess that God is Lord. And if you're taking part in an abortion and you may not doing the surgery, but you're involved in the process, if your blood is on the hand, you're going to be held just as guilty. Just like if you're helping a criminal get away with something, you're going to be held accountable as well.
Yeah, that's how it should be. That is how it should be. Now that Bullied Behind Bars is out in the world, what's next for you? Do you have any plans for writing another book or reclaiming life on your terms? What is next for you?
My objective is to get my book on the New York Times bestsellers list. I know it's a tall dream, but there's a good quote: "If people aren't laughing at your dream, they're not big enough."
Yeah, absolutely. I love that. That my goal is to make this like the next turning point. Obviously, I could never replicate what they have created, but I do want it to be big and to continue to get the word out. And you may have silenced Charlie Kirk, but there's going to be 1,000 of us, including myself, who are going to rise up and take over that bloody microphone. So, 100%. We'll finish it up on one last question here before the end of the show. What would you say to those who say that you cannot be a Christian and a gay person? What would you tell those individuals who do still believe in that?
They can believe whatever they want. You have to remember that the Bible was written 6,000 years ago, and what was understood then is not necessarily understood now. Homosexuality was in the DSM-4 until 1994 as a psychological disorder. Before AIDS, it was called GRID, gay-related immune disorder, I believe is the last word. I think it's disordered, but I'd have to check on the D. And the other thing is, whenever homosexuality is spoken about, it's not actually in red, which means Jesus isn't actually speaking. It is either Paul or one of the other disciples speaking. So again, there's what other people interpret is not what I interpret. Again, it's something that I have to wrestle with. It's a God and I thing. It's not for a church to try to get me to do conversion therapy, to try to make me somebody I'm not. That's demonic.
Yeah.
And when somebody
what happens to love thy neighbor?
Right, love thy neighbor as thyself.
Yep. And
when you point a finger at somebody else, you have the log beaming at you.
Yeah, 100%. 100%. Well, I want to say, again, thank you so much, Matt, for being here today. It has been a pleasure. I know that I look forward to purchasing this book and reading it for myself and understanding your journey a little bit better, and definitely advocating for everyone who listens to this podcast to listen or to read the book as well. So, again, I just want to say thank you so much for being here, and I appreciate this call.
Thank you. And you can follow me on Instagram, Bullied Behind Bars, X, Bars Bullied, Facebook, Matthew.Melvin.5621, my website, bulliedbehindbars.com, and you can email me if you have questions, bulliedbehindbars@gmail.com.
Absolutely. Well, folks, that's all we have in store for today. Join us on Friday as we break down a surprise topic. Share your thoughts on X. Follow us on Instagram and Facebook at the Martin Memo, and subscribe on YouTube. Now, in case I don't see you, good morning, good afternoon, and good night. This is the Martin Memo.